Welcome to Insights for Business Owners. And on this episode, we have Meryl Simmons, who's a professional EOS implementer and the founder of Clarity Coach. Meryl, great to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, it's so great to be here. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. So, we're going to start with something really basic, which what is EOS? We've all heard about it, and it's such a cool catchphrase, but to be honest, I don't understand it. So, fill us in. Yeah, yeah.
Hey, at least you didn't call it chapstick because we get a lot of like, is it a chapstick? Right? There's a brand called EOS that's chapstick.
That's
Yeah,
great.
so
That's great.
so EOS stands for the Entrepreneurial Operating System. So it's a business operating system, and a lot of people who maybe know about it or have heard of it, maybe have heard about it either from other business owners that they might be friends with, or maybe they read the book Traction, which I have behind me, which is written by the
Yeah.
founder, Gino Wickman. And
Nice.
and it's a business operating system, just like how you think about, how a computer has an operating system, right? Like your
Wow.
apps and like not to get technical, but so first of all,
Yeah.
it's not a digital platform, it's not
Okay.
technology.
Yep.
It's a proven system of simple tools and structure and frameworks that actually help business owners to get everything out of their head and get really
Yeah.
clear on their vision. Where are you going and how are you going to get there? Right? It helps teams to kind of stop that chaos or that reaction that we often kind of lean into when a business
Yeah.
lacks structure, right? To be able to execute on the most important things so that you're actually executing the vision. Not only do you need to know what it is, but now you need to start executing it, right?
Nice.
So being able to make sure that you've got good accountability and disciplines and habits in your business so that you can
Mm.
get stuff done, right? The right
Right.
things done, and everyone knows what to focus on. So whether you have, three people in your business or 300 people in your business, it's managing human behavior, right? Like we all
Yeah.
need to be able to manage human energy. And that's what the
Yeah.
operating system really does is it manages human energy to
Mhm.
align, to move in the same direction so that you can kind of stop that vibrating where everyone is just like so busy, but they're all moving
Right.
in the different directions and you can all go in the same direction. And actually, that's when that magic happens, right? And to do
Love
it
it.
in a healthy way, in a way that feels
Right.
fun, that doesn't feel grueling. And it just also, one more thing is that it gives everyone one common language too.
Yeah.
When you run on one common language, again, going back to kind of the technology, like if you have a computer and you have an
Yeah.
operating system, it's how it helps the
Right.
computer take the app and make the app work. And if it's a crummy operating system, the app's not going to work well. And
Right.
everything that you try and do with that operating system is the foundation of how your business runs day in and day out, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. And then how do you use that through Clarity Coach to help business owners?
Yeah. So EOS is the methodology that I use to help businesses. So it's about 20 tools in the EOS toolbox
Wow.
that I help teams to not just build for their business, but to implement and to master. And let me
Right.
let me give you maybe like a little bit more context because it feels still very abstract, right?
Right. Right. Right.
So, I know you work with business buyers, right? People
Yeah.
who are buying a business, and maybe when they're buying a business, they're really focused on like the financials, right? Of like
Yes.
closing that deal and like what does it look like on paper, right?
Right.
And so like, but they're not necessarily thinking about the behaviors that they might be buying.
No. I've never heard
So
anybody mention that. No.
yeah.
No.
And it's
No.
like things like, now I've stepped into the business that I've bought day one. Or if you're really getting ahead of the game, maybe you can ask
Yeah.
about this during your diligence process, right? But like, who owns the decisions in the business? How do
Wow.
decisions get made?
Great question.
Um, are there meetings that happen in the business? Again, even if there's a team of four, someone who
Mm.
works the office, someone who does, the billing and works the office, like
Right.
you've got all often people who are wearing multiple hats in smaller businesses as well. Small businesses kind of,
Yeah.
are always juggling the multi hat wearing thing, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you even know who does what? And
Wow.
does the business, is the business really getting what it needs to keep that forecasting that you've anticipated, those multiples, right, that you're
Hmm.
buying that business
Right.
on? In order for that to actually come true, does the business actually have what it needs in order to do that, from a behaviors, from a people thing, from a structure, how you make
Yeah.
decisions, how you run a meeting, how you share information and communicate. And
Wow.
so the work that I do helps you not only to take a step back and work on your business, not just in your
Mm.
business,
Mm.
but it kind of forces you to get really clear on, first of all, where do you want to go,
Yeah.
right? And then also, how are we going to get there?
Hmm.
And, from there, we start to implement some simple tools like a weekly scorecard that
Yeah.
helps us to actually track behaviors that we know that help us to predict what's happening in our business. So maybe I
Hmm.
own a pool company and I actually have no idea, how many customers we need to service a week, new
Right.
customers we need to
Right.
service a week in order to hit our growth goals, in addition to customers that have a contract with us for maintenance,
Hmm.
like, right, like
Yeah.
getting our arms around those things. But those are kind of like lagging indicators. It's now, how many times a week do I need to hit up that client for the maintenance? Or what are the
Right.
activities that drive the end result, that drive the outcomes, if that makes sense? So,
100%. Yeah.
so
100%. I feel
implementing those
like,
frameworks.
too, and we've talked about this a little bit, but like operational diligence up
Mm,
front is something that's not happening, like really. And I
yeah.
feel like some of those questions which were so new to me that you just asked, who makes the decisions, and how do meetings happen and all that. I feel like that should be a part of diligence too, and then that then helps you help the buyer with the transition, and
Yeah.
and that is
Well,
just
it's,
not happening. I can guarantee that. Yeah.
yeah, and sometimes there's shades of things of like what happens when the seller leaves, right? Does everything just freeze? Like, does
Right.
business just completely come to a halt because
Yeah.
you're the one, maybe the owner or the previous owner was the one that's like doing everything. They're the one that makes the revenue. They're the ones that, that kind of does everything in the business. And once they leave, what happens? Does everyone know what to do? Does the business actually have other core functions that are growing the business, selling in the business, operating that day to day, looking at
Yeah.
healthy finances? Like, are all the core functions of the business actually in place? Or are you walking into something that maybe isn't? And, one of the things I love in EOS that we do, there's a tool called the accountability chart. And it's one of the first things that I do with some of my larger clients who are kind of like
Yeah.
between 2 million and above, because they
Yeah.
typically now have some more people. But even for the
Yeah.
businesses that are 500,000 to 2 million, you still need to look
Yeah.
at the structure, right? Like,
Yeah.
what is growth for your business, and does anyone
Hmm.
currently own the growth function in your business? And if the answer is like not really, or part-time,
Right.
which often
Right.
it
Or
is, right?
what if
Yeah.
what if the business owner owns everything, Meryl? Like that's how I feel most days, like
Yeah, that is, I mean, I own everything in my business. I'm a
right,
solopreneur, right? And like, I
right.
don't know, can I
Not
can I say a
joking,
bad
but you know what
word?
I'm saying? Like you're like, who owns that? I'm like,
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
me.
That
Yeah.
stuff is hard. That
Yeah.
stuff is that stuff is hard, but like, but being able to look at it really clearly and using a tool, for example, like the accountability chart that
Yeah.
looks at the core functions of your business, and you're not saying what is it that my business was doing until this point, because it doesn't matter, because
Okay.
what got you to 1 million is not the same thing that's going to get you to 2 million. So
No. No.
eventually you've got to stop wearing all those hats,
Right.
and looking at those simple tools, like for example the accountability chart, which is essentially like an org chart with
Uh,
outcomes. It's an
wow.
outcomes based org chart, and it helps you to look at the business and say, what does each seat need to be responsible for in my business? What does my business need in the next 12 months?
Yep.
How do I define these core functions of my business, and are there gaps?
Hmm. A lot of gaps. Yeah. Is there, do you do it or do you work kind of in, concert with a outside CFO type who's got the projections? Like we have an outside CFO who's doing now some projections and stuff for us. Um, do you can you work in tandem with someone like that
Yes.
or are you able to do it yourself? Or yeah.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I'm sorry that thank you for asking it because it wasn't really clear. So when I work with teams that are between, 10 and 300 employees, and we're going
Yeah.
to do a full EOS implementation,
Yeah.
um, I work with the whole leadership team.
Okay. Nice.
So, if you have a CFO, if you have a head of marketing, if you have a head of sales, that's who we all do this work together. And part of that work that's so awesome is that it's an opportunity that everyone is co-architecting everything together,
Hmm.
right? Like that's what
Yeah.
drives alignment. That's also what sort of drives the like we need to do some push-ups together and like work this out, right? And like
Yeah.
so like in thinking about going back to kind of like your clientele when you've got maybe an existing business and a new owner, and they've got an existing team, it's
Yeah.
hard to sometimes drive those conversations and rally everyone up. And as usually business owners don't even know where to start. And
No.
so, where I come in is being able to help you to facilitate very in a structured, proven way
Yeah.
what it is that we need to, get out of our head of where we're going, that vision, where we're going and how we're going to get there. We need to look at the structure. Do we have the right seats for the business?
Yeah.
Also, we need to get honest and evaluate, do we have the right people and are they in the right seats for the
Yep.
business? Some of what business owners are new, some of what buyers are buying is like you're buying the people, right?
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
you
Structures.
how do you realize quickly um, whether you have the right people in the right seats? And the work that I do with clients allows us to pretty quickly identify very clearly and very objectively what it is that the business needs for structure, right people, right
Yeah.
seats, and then be able to right away start to prioritize 90-day goals and systems that help us to execute the most important things for us to get focused on. What is everyone, what, and who owns it? Like, who's
Who owns it?
responsible? It's not
Yeah.
just you,
Right.
business owner, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Right. Right. Well, down in our world of smaller businesses, I'll give you an example. A client called me with, and and this is some of the stuff they're dealing with. A client bought a machining business. They like
Mm,
fine tune high level metal parts or something like
cool.
that.
Yeah.
Well, buys the business, calls me a month or two later, says, Dave, turns out one of my employees, I didn't know this, is an alcoholic, got a DUI, uh, can't drive to work anymore.
Oh gosh.
and he'll disappear for 3 to 5 days on like a bender, and it's like, oh my
Wow.
gosh.
Yeah.
So some of the rubber hits the road from some of these small businesses, especially in the trades, is like
Yeah.
so messy, and
Yeah.
can EOS and these sort of things help with, that kind of stuff? Because I mean, like this is real, like he's like, I've never,
Yeah.
he's consulting. He's like, I never dealt with people like this before. I mean, some of it's culture and the sort of people,
Yeah. Yeah.
but like that's where the rubber's hitting the road for these small guys. I don't know if that makes sense, but
It does make sense. And I know a lot of like HVAC or
right.
pool or like,
Yeah.
smaller manufacturing type of businesses that do
Yeah.
really, really well actually using a system like EOS to help
Wow.
them to,
Cool.
like look, you still have to actually deal with that problem, right? You still have
Right.
to come out with a way to deal with that, to navigate that, to be kind, of course, and compassionate as a
Yeah.
leader. But
Yeah.
but one of the things that I think EOS does really well is it really highlights and makes very clear the areas that are either working or not working in a
Yeah.
very tool-based way, in a grounded way, not like an emotional way, right? And so you can quickly kind of identify, like, even if you're developing your core values of this business, maybe the business had core values before, maybe it didn't. Usually
Right, right,
if
right,
things
right,
are
right.
a little bit like that, they maybe don't, or maybe they didn't mean anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is like
Mm-hmm.
really knowing what it is that your core values are so that you can attract and repel people that
Mm.
really align with the culture, the way that you want people to exemplify in your business. And there is that messiness that can happen when you're walking into something where you didn't, you've inherited
Yeah.
people, and you need to be strategic about that. But again, EOS gives you that framework. Like when we work
Mm.
together, we can clearly say, okay, in the next 90 days, I've got to come up with some sort of plan to mitigate this risk here in the business. And
Yeah.
here's the system
Yeah.
that's going to help me to do that. I work with clients not only at that level that is like, 10 to 300 people,
Yeah.
revenue north of 2 million, but I also work with even smaller businesses where they don't
Yeah.
have a team, like a core team in place.
Right.
And it's
Right.
a little bit of a different approach. It's completely separate from EOS implementation.
Yep.
But I utilize a lot of the foundations that we know make sense and work to help us to
Mm-hmm.
drive execution and accountability and prioritization and
Awesome.
clarity in the business in a
That's
coaching
cool. Yeah. And
way.
tell me a little bit more about that program, because I think that's a great fit for our clients. Like it's a smaller end, it's sort of chaotic and and
Yeah.
in the lower level trade. So yeah, I mean it's not full EOS, but it's also helping build these systems. And tell me more about that sort of coaching and cohort stuff. And yeah,
Yeah, and it's completely separate from EOS implementation. I don't want to confuse the two.
I understand.
Um,
Yeah, yeah. Yep.
so I was meeting a lot of smaller businesses who still needed structure, and really what they needed was coaching and accountability because they
There you go.
had no team, but they needed to
Right.
get to a team, right? Like they
Yeah,
were
yeah.
they were on the trajectory to get there, but it was like,
Sure.
how do I
Yeah,
get
yeah.
there?
100%.
And so
Yeah.
this is a program. It's a minimum kind of 6-month program with very high touch accountability coaching,
Nice.
where you get strong foundations that help you to get clear on what's important, what's not working in the business, what is working in the business. So using a weekly scorecard that helps
Nice.
us to do that, meeting together. So it's not just theory, we're actually taking action and we're
Yep.
executing, right? I'm helping you to do
Yep.
that and get clear on what the priorities are. I also
Mm-hmm.
help, leaders do some leading and management type of coaching because many people maybe haven't led people
Yeah.
before in this
Right.
capacity, and the idea of delegating and how do we have those conversations. And so how can you use strong foundations to lead you and guide you in having these healthy conversations and smart conversations with your team? And
That's
so,
awesome.
I coach with you like every other week.
Yeah.
It's fully remote, and
Nice.
you have the opportunity to also work with up to 4 other business owners. It's a cohort program, so it allows
Nice.
for that peer to peer environment, which is really
Nice.
valuable. You're hearing other business owners maybe going through some similar things that you are, and it just
Yeah.
opens up an opportunity to learn, and really though just solve problems and get clear on your business.
That's awesome. One last question is SOPs and how that fits in, and how do you help people develop those? Because I feel like that's such an important thing, for accountability. Yeah, yeah.
It is, but I think I would push back on that
Oh,
and say, of course, the way that you do something, right? Your standard operating procedure, right? That's
yeah,
what
yeah, yeah,
SOPs means, and it's like the way that you do that thing in your business, right? It's your secret sauce to how you do what
right.
you do in your business, and
Yeah,
and the ideal scenario is that every core function of the business has an SOP.
yeah.
And, one of the things I love about EOS is it really helps you to simplify your business. Like, I think we
Mm,
often overcomplicate things. And,
mm-hmm.
I've met businesses that have like 40-page, strategic planning documents. They have like 10-page SOPs. And the truth
Yeah,
is nobody freaking reads that. And once it's
yeah,
done, nobody looks at it ever again.
yeah,
But so an SOP is great and important. And in EOS, we have, to strengthen the process component of our business. We always suggest that Each core function should document and share, the 20-80 rule. What is the 20% of the proven process for that part of the business to have it
Mm-hmm.
documented and shared? And then
Right.
obviously it's the manager's role to ensure that that is being executed on. But
Yeah.
but but that's just like the way you do it. The truth is if you
Okay.
don't know where you're going,
Right.
everyone doesn't know how they're going to get there and what the priorities are. Like,
Mm-hmm.
SOPs are just sort of like how you do your thing. It does, like, if you have the wrong people on the boat or on the
I see.
bus,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I mean, SOPs are important, but
Right.
the other stuff is really important. Like, how are you solving problems as a business?
Yeah.
Are you fixing things or do you just talk about stuff over and over and over again? Like, are you
Right.
actually solving issues at the root for your business? Like, all of those things I think are paramount to SOPs. Again, SOPs are one of the 6 key components of EOS that
Yeah.
we teach in the model. They're
Oh, interesting.
important to be
Okay. Okay.
strong.
Yeah.
Um, but like the other stuff I think is some, like, you can't get to that level if you don't have the other stuff in place, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that's helpful. No, that's great. And that's so helpful to dispel these myths and sort of explain it that the high level stuff, you got to start there. You got to start, with the plan, the plan, before you get into the
Yeah,
details.
yeah, you
Yeah.
got to you got to get out of firefighting and start running your
Yeah.
business like a freaking CEO. And the way that you
Right.
do that is by, operating your business on a predictable cadence and looking at certain optics and disciplines that actually enable us to do that with accountability and consistency, and
Nice.
also getting that structure of the people piece right,
Right.
clarity on
Right.
what the business needs. So,
100%.
yeah.
Meryl, what is the best way for people to find you? Online, LinkedIn,
Yeah.
share the deets here so
Yeah.
people
Yeah,
can
yeah,
find you.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you can kick it old school and like
Yeah.
reach me directly via email at meryl@claritycoach.io, or
Nice.
certainly check out my website
Yeah.
claritycoach.io, and feel
Sweet.
free to subscribe. I send regularly
Okay.
very actionable educational tips
I'm
that hopefully
subscribing.
you
That's
can
great. Yeah. There we go.
start to use right away. I am active on LinkedIn, so feel
Sweet.
free to link up with
Yeah.
me there. Yeah, those are the best places. I just started a Reddit account. I don't know, but like,
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah. I love it. Just push it
anyway,
out. Push it
yeah,
out.
but
Yeah. Find you a lot of
but
places.
claritycoach.io is the best
.io.
way, or shoot me an email.
Awesome.
Like, I'd love to chat with you and just have a
Cheers.
conversation, learn about what it is that you want from your business and
Yeah.
how this can help.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Meryl, and for sharing with our audience. I know this is a huge success. I know people are going to find a ton of benefit from it. So it's really helpful for to hear your thoughts.
Oh, that's awesome, Dave. Thank you so much for having me. It was really fun.
Cheers.